I need a moment, all right? So here's the thing, I'm working on something pretty massive for the month of November that requires a lot of prep work from me in advance, but I have already taken a couple of weeks off this year already, so I didn't want to go another week without giving you guys a video. So while I put together a bunch of incredible content both for next week and the month ahead, I figured, hey, a lot of you guys did actually enjoy when I released an older Patreon tutorial on this channel. If you haven't checked it out, it's up here. But I figured, you know what, I'll actually release another one just as an early Halloween present from me to you. So today we're going to take a look at how to paint the eye from a side view, a 3/4 view, and a 1/4 view. This is part of my Art and Chill series, which I put up on Patreon every single week and have done since January. And these are 100% real-time paint-along style videos. And that means that when you watch this video today, I want you to actually have your painting software open on the side and to be painting and drawing along with me. We're gonna look at the iris, the eyelids, and the eyelashes from each of these angles. I'm gonna show you how to render it to look realistic, and finally I'm gonna show you how to make the colors pop for that extra bit of punch. This tutorial went up on Patreon back in May, so that kind of gives you an idea of how much you've been missing out on if you're not on my Patreon quite yet. If you enjoyed this video, I promise you will enjoy every single one of them, so check it out, the link is in the video description. Alrighty, here's how to paint the eye from the side view, the 3/4 view, and the 1/4 view. Alright, so today we're gonna do 3 eyes, not gonna do like 5 eyes because that was a little too crazy. But today I want to cover the side view, the 3/4 view, and the 1/4 view. I'll explain what the 1/4 view is because I don't think it's an official term. But we're gonna start by sketching these out. So we're sticking with that sunglasses analogy, and when it comes to the side view, you want to not think quite so much about the eye itself to begin with. If you stick to that eye socket, the bony socket I mean, it gets a lot easier to then be able to map out the rest of the face based off of that, and it kind of gives you room to play around and see how you can position the eye and maybe change up the shape of it so you don't get same face syndrome and that. But I just like to rough in a little eyeball in there. So again, remember, the eyeball is not going to be bulging completely out unless it's a very rare circumstance, but generally the eyeball is almost half out of the socket and half inside, right? So with that eyeball in place, we can now start to wrap the eyelids around it. Again, remember, it's like wrapping a thick blanket around a ball, right? So when it comes to the shape of the eyelid, you want to remember that it's going to have that depth as well. I think I started off drawing the eyelid way too high. Yep, I've just gone ahead and erased it. But you kind of want to remember, like I said, that it wraps around and the eyelid itself has a bit of thickness, right? So it's not going to be pressed tightly against the eyeball. So there's going to be a little bit of give where you see the rim of the eyelid pop out further than the actual eyeball itself. And we're going to indicate a very rough, tiny little triangle just to show the inner corner peeking around it. So now that I'm happy with the rough, I'm going to lower the opacity and create a new layer. And now we can start finalizing some lines for the side view of the eyeball. So again, remember the area where the iris is, which is the colored part of the eye, is going to bulge out slightly more than the rest of the white of the eye. So that's something to keep in mind. You're going to see a bit of bulge right where the iris is. But in this step, we're basically deciding which lines we want to keep and which ones we can do away with from the construction lines below. So I think the biggest takeaway that I want you to remember from this exercise, drawing the eye in different angles, is the wrapping and the layering. Because you're not gonna see every part of every layer of skin, eyelid, I want to say. Some of it is gonna be hidden and overlapped by the rest of the eye because it is a structure that bulges out in the middle, and it kind of, the inner corner and outer corner kind of sink back into the face, right? So that's just something to remember, that you're not going to see all of the eye, but the bits that you do see, you want to make sure you include. All right, so I think I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just gonna go in and indicate the iris. I've just gotten rid of the construction lines for now. And I think what really sells the angle of the eye is how and where you place your eyelashes. So when it comes to the side profile eye, the majority of the lashes are going to be facing forwards and upwards, so forwards in the direction the eye is looking. But some of the lashes in the outermost corner of the eye, I think, can kind of swoop downwards and outwards. Same with the lower lashes, and I think this just really sells that idea of like the eyelid wrapping around the eyeball. Don't worry too much about like the nose or anything. I'll mostly just put it in there for my reference. But yeah, that's all there is to the side eye. We'll get to rendering it in just a little bit, but let's move on to the 3/4 view. So this is when you angle your head kind of 45 degrees, so not completely to the side, but slightly to the side. And this is the eye that faces you, that is in full view. So it's not head on, but it's not quite side eye either. So that's your 3/4 view. And like I said, this is the eye that is closest to you. So you're gonna see most of it, but it's pretty much just about angling everything slightly differently to a head-on front-facing eye. So again, we're starting with the socket. This time, basically just taking your usual socket shape and shrinking it a little bit horizontally and placing the eyeball in. And now we can think about wrapping the eyelid around it. And here you're gonna notice that you're gonna see a little more of the inner tear duct area, but not so much of the kind of bit in the inner corner where the eyelid ends, or like the crease of the eyelid ends. You're not going to be able to see that. So the crease of the eyelid is basically going to be a second line that just emerges from the upper rim of the upper eyelid, if that makes sense. But we're gonna go ahead and also make sure the lower eyelid wraps around the eyeball as well. And like I was saying, it's all about really selling that layering. So no matter how the eye is angled, what really sells the angle is one, that the eyelids have a bit of thickness while they wrap around it, so they're not like squeezed, like squeegeed up against the eyeball. And second is the placement of the lashes. So we're gonna go ahead and lower the opacity, and on the clean lines layer, we're gonna go ahead and clean the lines. So again, really making sure to include all of the important bits. One thing I should probably mention is that you're gonna start to see a little bit of the inner rim of the upper eyelid as well. And this is something you rarely see head on or sideways. Here you're gonna be able to see a little bit of that underside of the upper eyelid. So, you know how the lower eyelid has that rim where you kind of put your eyeliner, I guess, if you're doing your lower eyelid, but it's called the waterline, right? The upper eyelid obviously has that as well, but we don't see it as much because it's usually hooded over by the upper eyelid. But in this specific angle, you will be able to see that a little bit. So it's just one of those slice of life details, you know, that really sell the realism. But for the most part, it is pretty much, this angle is basically a hybrid of the side eye and the front-facing eye. So on the inside, it's a little more like the side eye, but on the outside, it's a little more like the front-facing eye, if that makes sense. But with the lashes, you kind of want to make sure that here they're kind of fanning out in all directions, not just, you know, forwards and backwards. So it really sells that spherical attribute to the eyeball. And same with the lower lashes. And oh, if you're wondering, I am using a pencil brush, and I think it is quite size pressure responsive. So the less pressure I apply, the thinner the line comes out, and that I personally enjoy that when it comes to sketching, because it's like a real pencil, and it really helps me make my lines look more organic, if that makes sense. But yeah, just roughing in the eyebrow. Again, this is not the focus of today's video, so we're not going to worry too much about the secondary details like the eyebrows and the nose and everything. I'm mostly just putting it there so we are aware of it, so we kind of know where to end this painting, essentially. Yeah, just roughing in the nose really quickly. I'm probably gonna delete it because I do not like how it looks. I'm probably gonna end up deleting it later in the process anyway, but just for reference sake, that's kind of where the nose would go if I had done it right, which I didn't. But moving on to the 1/4 view, this is basically the other eye from the 3/4 view head. So it's the eye that is covered by the nose for the most part. So it's the eye that's facing away from you when the head is tilted at a slight sideways angle. So this time, it's kind of like the side eye, but on steroids. So you're gonna see even lesser of it. And what you do see is mostly just the eyelid and the brow bone. And the eye itself is actually quite small. So here is me sketching that socket, but really condensed version of it, and roughing in the eyeball. Now again, remember, a lot of this is going to be blocked off by the nose, so you're probably not going to see too much detail, especially the inner corner and that kind of stuff, because again, the nose is in the way. So what you do see is a bit of upper eyelid and a bit of lower eyelid, and you know, maybe an iris, but even the iris would probably be like squashed or something. And you kind of see the outer contour of the brow bone. So again, like with the side eye, the eyelashes will mostly be facing forwards. So yeah, I'm just roughing in the nose at this stage again, just so everyone knows what we're doing. And we're gonna lower the opacity and create the new, work on the new layer, on the fair sketch layer, as opposed to the rough sketch. But just going in and refining. And here again, you're gonna probably see a little bit of that inner rim of the upper eyelid. Because again, it's at an angle that you probably wouldn't see head on. So you're gonna see like little details like that, but all the big details are mostly gonna be lost. So you won't have your tear duct area, you won't have all of the eyebrow. One thing to remember though is that the brow bone fat or bone, I don't remember which one it is, but that's gonna kind of protrude out above the eyelid, right? So that's kind of what gives you that bracket shape just above the upper rim of the eyelid, if that makes sense. So from the eyebrow down to the crease of the eyelid is basically a very deep C. So C as in the alphabet, not the water body. So that's our sketches. Alright, so I've just gone ahead and resized everything and painted the canvas a 50% grey, just because it gives you a better idea of how dark and light your values really are. And I'm gonna start by grabbing the lasso tool and just blocking in some base colors for these three eyes. I'm not looking to vary too many things today, like eyelid shapes and everything. We're gonna keep it pretty simple. I actually grabbed a painting. I don't remember what painting this was, but I put it into the paletator plugin just so it's easier to pick colors, because I felt like I'd been using the skin tone spheres for so long that it kind of got boring. So I'm just gonna grab random base colors, and we're gonna keep these more to the darker side, just so then we can add in the highlights as we paint. So these are on a layer of their own underneath the sketch, and yep, that's good. So we're gonna create a new layer on top and clip it. Oh, apparently we're switching back to the skin tone spheres. Okay, so I'm gonna create a new layer on top of this block and clip it to the color block, and grab a chalk brush and start to work on the first eye. And I'm going to start by placing in some of the highlights. So here it's important to remember that the highlights would mostly be focused on the areas that actually face you. So for instance, the upper eyelid and the brow bone. But with the brow bone, you want to remember that the inner corner of the eye socket is going to be quite shadowy, right? Because the eyebrow hangs heavy over it, the other socket of the eye hangs heavy over it, as well as like the little dip in the nose, and the eye kind of pushes back into the skull in that area. So just underneath the front of the eyebrow is going to be quite dark. And we're going to carry some of that darkness into the crease of the upper eyelid, right? Because there's a bit of overhang there, and it's gonna hood over the upper eyelid. So still keeping in mind that anatomy of the eye, it's only like sideways. So nothing's really changed, as in nothing's changed in terms of how we render these areas. It's just the placement of these areas has changed, right? So think of it as basically painting the outer half of like a front facing eye, and then the inner corner just kind of squashes into like a sliver just at the inside of the eye, basically. Yep, that was my convoluted explanation for how angles work. You're welcome. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So I'm just going in and just placing in the values at the moment. Also, you're going to want to keep a bit of shadow on the sides of the nose, because a lot of the times the nose kind of drops a shadow on either side of itself, because it is protruding forward. So like the area of the nose that is furthest away from the face is gonna look lighter, right? So everything around it tends to look a little darker. Still going in, placing the values in the waterline and things like that. I've just grabbed the gray from the background to paint in the white of the eye, and white is in quotations because technically it's very rarely actually white. I'm also grabbing a darker bluey shadow color and placing it at the upper rim of the upper eyelid, as well as just painting the iris in. And for this eye, I wanted to go kind of a steel blue color. And so I've just placed that in the bottom U of the iris and blended that into the shadows above as well. And with the side-facing eye, a cool trick is to actually place a little bit of lightness on the inside of the iris. So on the far side that's next to the pupil, the side that's not close to you is obviously going to be bright, but also it helps to place a tiny little sliver of light just beyond the pupil as well, and that really sells that the kind of look of the eye basically being a glass kind of three-dimensional dome. and the color is kind of flat towards the back of it. I don't know if I'm doing a very good job of explaining that, but when it comes to the eyelashes and the specular highlights, I'm kind of doing that on the sketch layer because I want it to overlay the sketch. No reason really, it's just convenience. But I wanted to maintain some of those lines just so I know where everything is going, but I'm not being too precise about it at all. Just going in and adding the tiny details now, and this was, I think, a very quick process. Probably because there isn't that much area to cover as there was with the front facing eyes. So yeah, just going in, refining things. Don't worry too much if the colors feel a little lifeless. We're gonna come back in with an airbrush and color dodge in just a little bit after we're done rendering the other two eyes as well. But for now, I'm just going in and roughly throwing in the eyebrow. Nothing too crazy, just feathering the edges of it just a little bit, but that's about all the effort that goes into eyebrows. Yep. So let's move on to the 3/4 view. So again, going into the clipped layer, I'm gonna grab a slightly darker, warmer highlight tone for this one because I want the skin to be a little darker. We're gonna make the eyes brown as well, just because it's fun, really. I didn't want to do like a bog standard eye for every single one of these because that's no fun. But it was a Monday, you guys, when I was painting this, so like allow it, please. So again, we're gonna place most of the highlight at the upper kind of the area just above the crease of the upper eyelid, if that makes sense, where the brow bone is, right? So that's the most bony protrusion in the eye, or around the eye rather. So that's where the brightest tones go, and then we go in and add a little bit of mid-tone on the upper and lower eyelid, and just making sure to blend everything out. It's very rare that you see skin texture on the eye apart from like creases and wrinkles. Like, it's very rare you see pores and that around the eye itself. You might see some up by the eyebrows because like you have hair in the eyebrows, so that's kind of where you'd see pore detail. But for the most part, the eye is pretty much soft blending and maybe some hard creases running through for like wrinkles. So I'm going in and blocking in the iris and the shadow of the upper eyelid with a pretty dark black, essentially. Well, it was technically a dark gray, but you know. And still grabbing a gray steely tone for the white of the eye. Don't worry too much. Again, if it looks dull, we'll come back to this in just a sec. I'm going in and brightening things up around the iris just a little bit, just to push that contrast and make everything a little more dramatic, but nothing too crazy, nothing too like out there or anything. So now I'm starting to think about the iris itself, and just like with the front facing eye, we want to concentrate most of the brightness at the lower half of the iris, because again, the upper half is usually shrouded in the shadow of the upper eyelid because it overhangs. So even if you have very pale eyes, the upper half of it is likely gonna appear way darker. So that's kind of what we're trying to emulate by only really placing the light colors at the bottom half of the iris. And I also like to add in some striations now and then, especially with darker eyes, because it's very rare that you see those, and I like to enhance them. With lighter eyes, it's quite easy to see the striations and things like that, but I like to work backwards. I like to keep my lighter eyes clearer just because it's cool. So yeah, you can add striations if you like, you can leave them out if you like, but just going in and refining everything. I've moved up to the sketch layer now, and this is where I place my specular highlight for the eye. And one thing I've been enjoying doing lately is actually blending out like one edge of the specular highlight. I feel like that really adds a bit of interest rather than just having like a straight up white spot. I feel like having a little bit of blending just on one edge of the specular highlight makes it look like there is a little bit of like dimmer light as well reflecting off the eye, and that really sells the realism. So that's something I've been enjoying doing. But just going in and throwing in the eyelashes, nothing too original at this stage. Like, we're mostly just following the sketch and just adding dimension to it, really. That's what rendering is all about, is like taking your sketch and adding dimension to it. So yep, nothing too insanely innovative or anything like that at this stage. Oh, I did go in and brighten up that waterline of the lower eyelid a little bit, just to make it look like wetter. It kind of adds a little bit of shine in like an otherwise dull area. So let's go ahead and move to the final eye. And this time I want to make the iris like a hazel greeny brown. So I'm going to keep the skin tone quite red, just to complement it nicely. And it also works genetically because hazel eyes or green eyes are basically somewhere between blue and brown. So you have like partial pigmentation of the iris. So it makes sense that the skin would also kind of lie somewhere between really pale and light and cool tones versus kind of darker and warmer tones. So that's kind of why I chose this color for the skin. But again, you guys can totally, I should probably have said this earlier, but you guys can absolutely just change everything up and paint whatever you like. We're focusing mostly on the technique here, right? So feel free to vary from what I'm doing. In fact, I encourage it because just have fun with painting. I know that's like stupid advice and like everyone says it, like, oh, just have fun with it, and you're here like trying to figure out whether it's worth it to actually paint 3 eyeballs. But like we mentioned in the group chat, I think earlier today when I'm recording this, which is Wednesday, earlier today I did mention in the group chat how, like, even if you feel like your painting didn't turn out right or it's just a dud, what you want to keep in mind is that your muscles are always learning. Your muscles are always learning from every movement you make, and it's always storing it into your subconscious. So even if you feel like you didn't end up with like a cool end product, I can promise you it was definitely worth it, because you're basically feeding your muscle memory, and someday you're gonna wanna paint and just completely switch off your conscious mind and just allow your hands to do what they want to do. And that is when you will be grateful that you painted all these awful, terrible end products, because even though it feels like a waste, you've actually learned a lot of valuable muscular movement. So if you feel like, if you feel discouraged by the end product not looking quite right, just take it as, it's whatever. The end product is not your goal. The process is. Okay, so when you make that little mental shift, it actually gets a lot easier to accept whatever paintings do. Sometimes they have a mind of their own. Happens to me all the time. Sometimes they just do not want to cooperate with me, and those are times when I'm usually late painting, late putting up paintings on Patreon, and that is usually when I've kind of had a mental conflict with the painting. But it used to bother me so much, and I used to just hate myself for it. But over time I've learned that actually that's one less mistake to make in the future, right? So that's just thought I'd mention that. So I'm not even when I'm doing like tutorials and YouTube videos and that, and sometimes it just goes completely wrong and I have to just scrap the painting and start all over, it's part of the process as an artist, not just the painting process, but the process of, you know, becoming who you want to be as an artist is spending hours doing all of these amazing paintings and then to have them turn around and almost like betray you. The number of times I've been betrayed by a painting, oh my goodness, it could be a 7-season show. But so at this stage, I'm pretty happy with what I have. So I've gone ahead and merged the layers that we've painted today. I've grabbed a soft airbrush and set it to color dodge mode. And we're gonna go in and start adding a little bit of life just in the areas where we want to kind of brighten things up a little bit. And so for me, that's mostly in the lower half of the eyeball itself, as well as in the skin that's facing the light. And I love color dodge. I love this stuff. Whoever invented it, have my firstborn, honestly, take it. I probably won't want it, but it really adds brightness and saturation, and that's kind of amazing. So I'm just going in, and again, if you feel like it's way too colorful, your color dodge, just lower the saturation and try again, and that should fix things. So I think I'm pretty happy with everything at the moment. Just going in and quickly airbrushing just the outer edges, just so they don't look like color block, which they were originally, and just doing some levels adjustments and maybe some color balance as well, because I felt like it was a little too orange and too warm. So I've just gone ahead and lowered that just a little bit, desaturated the reds and yellows, and that's pretty much our finished eyes. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial and that maybe it's helped you think about the more three-dimensional structure and form of the eye beyond what just lies at the surface. If you guys are on the Discord server and you want to share your paintings from today, please do. I would be so happy to see how they're turning out. You can always share them in the channel called General Art Share, and it would just mean the whole world to me to see them. If you've enjoyed this and are super into the idea of maybe me releasing an older art and chill once every few months, then let me know in the comments below, because I'd be more than happy to. And if you're new here or you have been watching for a while and haven't done it yet, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, because next week is Style Study Week, and this month we are tackling what is arguably the toughest, most intimidating style study that I've ever done. So you do not want to miss out when that drops next week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. And again, if you want to catch up with all the art and chills that you've missed over the last 10 months or so, then make sure you come check out my Patreon. The link is in the video description, and tutorials are available to all of the tiers. Alrighty, this video has been plenty long and I can't wait for you to check out all of the stuff that I've been working on behind the scenes. So with that said, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Check out some more videos up here and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!